if you could introduce yourself, tell us what you do, a little bit about the company, so we can get a good understanding.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Western New York Energy. We're excited to have you here today. So my name's Amanda Nash. I am the commodities manager here at Western New York Energy. I've been here for about 14 years now, and I actually started here as an intern. So a little bit about Western New York Energy. We started production in 2007. So we've been producing ethanol here for 18 years now. A very exciting fact was yesterday we actually produced our billionth gallon of ethanol, which was pretty substantial for us. And to put it into perspective for you, with a billion gallons of ethanol, you can drive your car from Earth to Neptune and back 5 times. So that's a pretty pretty large amount of ethanol gallons that we produced here. And to get to that billionth gallon of ethanol, we had to grind approximately 360 million bushels of corn here. So, one of the big reasons for Western New York Energy being here is to support our local farmers and to have them have an outlet for the corn that they could grow in their fields. So, over those 18 years, we've bought and ground 360 million bushels of corn. So as you'll see here, this is kind of the start of our process. So we have two grain probes. When a farmer brings their load of corn in, what we'll do is we'll take a couple samples from that corn truck to be able to look and test the quality of that incoming corn. On any given day, we'll have over 100 trucks in and out of our facility. So right now it's a little bit quieter with just getting into harvest here in Western New York. But on some of our busier days, we could see upwards of 150 corn trucks in and out of our plant, as well as 20 to 30 distiller trucks coming in to get feed, 20 to 30 ethanol trucks as well, and also the CO2 trucks that are coming in to get our beverage grade CO2 that's produced. So one thing you'll see throughout the process is that we use the entire kernel of corn. So truck traffic is quite busy here. So we're going to head into our scale room and you can see the process of when the corn comes in. So this is our scale room where the whole process starts. So this is where we run those grain probes that you saw out there. The scale room operator, Caleb, will take a few samples from that corn truck. The corn will then come in here and we'll dump it out right through here. We'll do a visual inspection of the corn just to make sure that there's no foreign materials, any broken corn, soybeans. If it looks moldy or anything like that, we'll test it for moisture and test weight. In order for us to store corn for a longer period of time, we need it at a specific moisture so it doesn't go bad. We'll also run a toxin test on the corn. So there's different types of toxins that can grow while the corn is growing in the field. Aflatoxin or vomitoxin are two of the bigger ones that actually in through our system will multiply by 3 when in the end product. So we want to make sure that that toxin level is not in there to be able to sell that for our dried distillers for the feed mills. So once that corn is sampled and goes through all of the different testing, the truck will come up onto our scales. We'll record the weights. We'll record what farm it's from so we know what contract it's going on. And here you can see how the grain probe moves up and down, and we would be able to see the truck pull underneath there And it's just kind of like a video game joystick where they move that around and take a sample from the front and the back, and then the corn will flow right inside here for us.
Thank you, Amanda. So is ethanol only made from corn, or are there other plants that we can use to make ethanol?
Yep, there is a few different commodities that they'll make ethanol from. And primarily here in the US, it is corn because it's so abundantly available. But there are different kinds of commodities that you can use.
Awesome. And how long have you all been doing this ethanol making?
Yep, so we've been here since the end of 2007 producing, so about 18 years now. And so you'll see as we go throughout the plant too that we've expanded a lot since 2007. When we started production, we only had one scale and one grain probe. About 10 years ago, we added a second grain probe as well as a second scale. And that has really helped with our traffic flow. One of the big things we try to do here is getting our trucks in and out quickly so that the farmers that are close by can get multiple loads of corn in during the day. So the whole process from start to finish when they come in and get sampled, get weighed and go out back and dump and come back around and get an empty weight. We keep it about 15 minutes as long as there's not a big line.
And you said it's just the corn kernel that's delivered, right?
Yes,
And
so
so, yeah, how do the farmers get the kernels off of the cob?
yep. So when you combine a field of corn, that will shuck everything off of that ear of corn and spit everything else out. Whereas if you're chopping the corn for, say, silage for cows, that's going to chop up the entire stalk of corn. But a combine specifically just takes the kernel of corn off the cob, and then the farmers will either bring it right in on their trucks or they can store it in their bins on their farm as well. So as you'll see here as we're walking back, we do have a set of railroad tracks here. We have 4 tracks on site. When the plant was originally built, we thought a good majority of our corn would have to come in on rail, and as well as our ethanol going out on rail. Now, 18 years later, about 90% of our corn comes in on truck from New York growers, and 100% of our ethanol goes out on truck and stays in between Rochester and Buffalo, all in the Western New York market. So that's been pretty substantial for our local community, our local growers, as well as our local consumers here in Western New York. Right now, we do have a train of corn cars that we're unloading. So we brought this in yesterday. It was 91 cars of corn that added up to about 350,000 bushel. So as we're walking past this here, these are our grain bins where we store the corn that we unload. So when we originally started, we started with the 2 silos in the back. Each of those silos can hold 500,000 bushels of corn. And this newer silo can hold 800,000 bushels of corn. So altogether, we can hold 1.8 million bushels of corn, which sounds like a lot, but we run 24/7, almost 365 days a year. So we grind 56,000 bushels of corn every single day. So if we were completely full with our 1.8 million bushels of corn, it would only last us about a month. So we always say we're a production facility making ethanol #1, but very close second, we are a logistics company. We always have to be having the trucks or trains coming in, bringing us corn. as well as the empty trucks coming in and taking our products so that we can continue to produce. We do have 2 maintenance shutdowns a year. So, like I said, we run almost 365 days a year. We have a fall and a spring shutdown where we shut the plant down and we're able to go through and clean everything, do any type of preventative maintenance on things that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Yep, so right here, these are our 2 older silos. They both hold 500,000 bushels of corn. What you see next to it is all the elevators in our grain leg system that will take the corn into the different silos. So when the corn trucks are unloading, they unload into the floor, and we are able to determine which silo we want to put it in. You'll see right here in bay 3, we're able to unload the train right inside. So right now they're moving the train cars, and these are what is called a hopper bottom. So each car will have 3 hopper bottoms, and the grains operators will open the floor of those hopper bottoms, and the corn will fall out of the bottom and go right into our conveyors. They do the same thing with the corn trucks that unload.
During this process, and also when the corn is going into the silos, is there any risk for damage? Does any equipment ever get damaged? And how do you address it?
Yeah, so we rely heavily on our preventative maintenance. Uh, Weekly, we do what's called a mill maintenance. So we'll go through all of our conveyors and grain legs to make sure that everything is working properly. We also have an entire maintenance crew on site that takes care of any maintenance issues that may come up with the plant. But the preventative maintenance and cleaning is something that we rely heavily on here to be able to keep that equipment working for us.
Awesome. And
So
so
you'll
you,
see,
go,
yeah, so
sorry.
you'll see here, this is what's called a dump trailer. So instead of having the hoppers on the bottom, he opened what's called a coal chute at the back end of his truck and dumping it right down into the conveyors. And that corn will then go right into our silos. And so this corn train of 91 cars is about 350,000 bushels. And that will last us about 10 days.
And so do you fill up the silos and these different containers fully and
We,
you just move on to the
yep,
next one?
we don't. So we have the 3 different silos, so we can kind of manage that. We like to have at least 2 silos with corn in it so that we have different places that we could pull the corn out of. And just for storage purposes, we like to be able to switch back and forth between different silos. When we empty one, we'll go in and sweep it and clean it out and make sure that it's all clean so that we can continue to put product in it.
Awesome. And so the corn that we just saw on camera is also part of our inquiry boxes. So can you talk about the different types of corn, what's different from the one we just saw and something like sweet corn or popcorn?
Yeah. Yep. So you'll see sweet corn in the field that we as humans can go and eat. And then there's field corn. And that field corn can be grown for feed for say dairy cows, and that will get chopped into a silage, or you can combine it and have that corn come in and be used for our ethanol production. The other part of our ethanol production, like I said in the beginning, was we use the entire kernel of corn. So even though we're making the fuel from the corn, we also make a high protein dried distiller's grain. And that will go out to feed mills, dairy farms. We sell to a few poultry farms as well. So, sometimes people will think, oh, we're taking away feed for the animals, but what we're actually doing is producing our renewable energy as well as creating a higher protein feed for those animals as well.
That's awesome. And so when farmers, so you all don't grow any corn on site, right? You get
No,
all the
no,
corn.
yep. So we contract with local farmers here in New York. So they'll go in there, they'll harvest their fields, and they'll have a certain amount of bushels that they'll be able to market to us. So we market by the month. So say one farmer has 10,000 bushels that he would like to sell in the month of February. So he can market that 10,000 bushels, and then in February, he can haul those bushels into us. So we do it on a month by month basis. And we kind of also are able to project that way to know that we have that continuous flow of corn coming in. We also have our own trucking company that we work with some of the smaller farms that if maybe they don't have a fleet of trucks to be able to haul in that corn, we can offer that service to them as well.
Awesome. And so how many farmers do you work with? And also, when they're growing their corn, are there any pests or diseases that could
Hmm.
affect the corn?
Yep.
Is there ever anything like a shortage of corn? Anything that causes a challenge like that?
Yeah. So farmers face quite a lot of challenges, climate being one of the biggest. Certainly this year in Western New York, we were in close to a drought for most of the summer. So our corn crop this year is going to be much lighter than it was last year. Um, our business is very much like farming, where commodity prices and supply and demand have a large effect on us. So that's something that we are looking into. As you saw the train coming in, uh, we had gone about 2 years without having to bring a train in because last year farmers in New York had a huge crop of corn. So we were able to source all of our corn right here in New York. This year, it's going to be a much smaller crop because of the growing conditions. So we do have to source the corn from elsewhere as well. Our first priority is always to our local growers and to New York truck corn. But like I said, running a 24/7 operation, we do have to make sure that we have that product coming in. So right here, you'll see this is our dried distiller's grain. So this is the solid material that is separated from the ethanol. And what it does is it gets put through two giant industrial size dryers, and the material is dried down to about 11% moisture. And this will be sold to feed mills, dairy farms, things like that to go into their rations for their animals. So we produce about 400 ton a day of dried distiller's grain. And this building completely full could only hold about 4,000 ton. So again, the logistics of always having the trucks coming in and getting it, knowing that we have our product sold and meeting the quality that those end users need as well.
And this looks like a pretty big facility. So how
Yes.
big in total is your whole facility? And then do you deal with issues like mice?
So pest control is a big thing that we have to look out for. As you'll see, we have an overhead door that brings the loader in and out. We also follow FSMA regulations with our feed grade material. So cleanliness with our loader, we clean the loader every single day. We do a lot of cleaning of the walls and the floors in here as well. So that's a big part of our preventative maintenance plan as well.
And it's like how many square, like several thousand
Yeah,
square feet?
so we have several different buildings, and like right back here, you'll see we have our tank farm. The building beyond that is our on-site maintenance shop. So we have several different buildings laid out throughout the plant.
Awesome. And
So,
so
yep,
got one more for you.
yeah.
So ethanol, can you talk a little bit about what it means to be fuel and how can you define energy
Yeah,
and how all of that
yep.
works?
So ethanol is renewable energy. So when you go to the gas pump, you'll probably see a little sticker that says contains 10% ethanol. So all fuel that's sold in the US right now contains 10% ethanol in it. There are some places that sell an E15, which is just 15% ethanol. Um, there are vehicles that run on E85 as well. So it's just a cleaner burning fuel than gasoline. An important thing to know is the why behind our ethanol production. You know, we want to be that outlet for the local growers to have a place for their corn to go, but we're also creating a cleaner environment and a greener future with our renewable energy.
And in addition to fuel that we might see at the gas station, what other ways can we use ethanol?
So ethanol is primarily used for we have our fuel ethanol. We also, about 3 years ago, put it in a VHQ system, which takes all of the impurities out of our fuel ethanol. And that makes it so we're able to produce a high purity alcohol, which we now sell as beverage grade or industrial grade alcohol. So that beverage grade alcohol can go to places like distilleries and industrial alcohol. We have a vinegar plant about 10 miles away from us that now takes our industrial grade alcohol to use in their process for producing vinegar as well. So right now we're on our wet distillers pad. We mainly produce our dried distillers grain, which is about 11% moisture. This is a wet distiller's grain that's about 60% moisture. So, because of where we live, we don't really have the means to store 400 ton of wet 60% moisture grain outside all throughout the year. So, but we do have this pad in case we have to do any type of dryer maintenance. We can still be producing that distillers. It just comes out in a wetter form. We do have a few customers that prefer the wet distiller's grain, but we primarily make our dried distiller's grain. Out back here too, you can see our blue loadout racks. So when the ethanol trucks come in, We have two different racks where they can load the fuel out of, and they can actually load 24/7. It's a completely automated system. So they pull up and they use that loadout arm to connect to their truck. And then there's a computer out there where they type in their specific load number and how many gallons they need. And then it will begin loading for them and print out all of their paperwork afterwards. So they can load 24/7. We have guys that start about at 3 a.m. and they'll run two shifts of drivers to be able to constantly taking that fuel out.
Awesome. I got another question for
Yeah.
you. So in that process, or like when, this says, how much does the feed cost per tractor trailer load?
Yep. So we are a commodities-based business. So when we buy corn from the farmer, it's based on the market or the futures price for that month. So it's basically the trading of the corn. So based on commodity prices, I've seen it upwards of $8 a bushel for corn. Right now, in this month, we're paying about $4.20 per bushel of corn. So it really fluctuates. And that's why farmers also have to be the marketers of their grain to be able to watch the prices of the commodities and know how much they have and be able to market their corn throughout the year so that they know that they're getting a good price for their corn and still making money on every bushel that they're creating. And we do the same thing on our end with buying the corn and then marketing our distillers and ethanol because that as well is based on a fluctuating commodity based market. So this is what's called our energy center. And these are the two big dryers that those solids are going through to get dried down into the 12% distiller's grain. So they rotate just like your dryer at home and dry your clothes. They're rotating and that feed is in there getting dried down.
Is there any risk of being flammable or just kind of making sure you
Yeah.
follow your
Yep.
practices?
Yep. So we have a lot of safety training here because we do deal with a lot of hazmat stuff, a lot of hazardous stuff. What would surprise some people is one of our biggest hazards here is the grain dust that we have. So another reason why we take the cleanliness so seriously over there as well.
And how hot do those dryers get?
I could not give you an exact number on that, but very warm. I will tell you it's the best place to be in the winter because it's nice and warm in there.
Awesome. Do you know how much materials produced daily, such as the ethanol,
Yep,
or some
so
other
we
byproducts?
produce about 170,000 gallons of ethanol each day. That works out to just over 62 million gallons of ethanol per year. We produce about 400 ton of distillers a day, and we also produce about 10,000 gallons of corn oil per day. And that's all of that material is from just 56,000 bushels of corn. So each bushel of corn, which is about 56 pounds, can make 3 gallons of ethanol. So we are a net positive energy producer. So everything we're producing here, we're making more energy than we're actually using to produce it.
Awesome.
So we're
And
coming into our main process building now. This is where, so we can see the corn silos behind us. The grain then will be pulled over to our process building to start the whole, what we call cooking of the ethanol. So it'll get ground up into a very fine powder, and then they will start adding all the different ingredients to produce the ethanol.
So from when trucks are first dropping off corn to when trucks are leaving with ethanol, how long does that process take?
It differs based on fermentation time, and also kind of when we're pulling that particular corn into the process. As far as like distillers, we always say it's almost like a 5 day turnaround of when it all comes into the process and then being taken out in truck. So here you'll see all of our different ingredients that will go into the ethanol process. We run a lot of trials here to always try and see if we can be more efficient in our ethanol production. So in order to run 24/7, we run a we run 2 shifts of 5 different guys each day. So they run a 12-hour swing shift. And so we have 4 of those crews. And in here in our control room, we'll walk through quickly, but you'll see our board operator watching the entire plant from where he's sitting. And his other operators are going out into this building and taking samples from different points of the process. Then they're taking that to the lab to be able to run tests on it, bringing that back to their board op, and he can make different adjustments to the plant to make sure that we're hitting all of our requirements to make sure we have that quality of ethanol as well as our efficiency. So we're going to go ahead and walk through here. So as you can see, we have all of our different computers here that'll show us all of the different tanks and levels, all of the different piping. You'll see some trends right here of we have the cameras throughout the plant so you can see what's going on.
And can you speak to the jobs in this working within the company or in the industry?
Yeah.
And if you could get a job, right after high school, and how much training and how much money you could expect to make.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So um, all of our training um, high school diploma, and then you come in and you receive all your training from somebody else here. So as we go into the lab, you can see some of the different tests that they're running. And so they'll go and take their samples and do their tests and then be able to bring those results back to the board operator. And so, like I said, we have the 4 crews that run the 12-hour swing shift. We also, well, right from the beginning up front, we have our admin building with our accounting team. We also have our grain operators who take care of all of the loading and unloading of our grain. We have a maintenance staff on site. We also have a high purity logistics division that takes care of all of our high purity alcohol. So when we started back in 2007, the company started with about 35 employees. And by the end of this year, we'll be at about 70 employees. And Most of the people that work here all live right in Orleans County, grew up around here with little to no ethanol experience. So we really we like to tell people, we don't expect ethanol experience and knowledge when you come in. Everything is learned right on the job. We work with a lot of different companies in the industry to be able to go to trainings. We bring people out for different trainings on our equipment or any new processes that we're doing. So these are some of our tanks. As we walk by, you can see we have our yeast tanks that hold the yeast that will be put in to be able to eat that starch to turn to alcohol. Over here, we have our tri-canner feed tank, and that's what takes the oil out of the corn. And so that's where we produce that corn oil. And we're producing about 10,000 gallons of corn oil a day. So here you'll see these are bags of urea. That's another component that we'll put into the ethanol process. And these big tanks down through this alley are called our fermenters. So when we originally started, we started with 4 fermenters, and now we have a 5th one as well. So that's where that alcohol is being produced through the fermentation process. So a lot like when you put yeast in when you're baking bread and you see the bubbles, that's that yeast eating the starch to create the alcohol.
Awesome. This is really cool. And so, such a large operation, how long did it take to build something like this?
It was well over a year. And actually, fun fact, I grew up right around the corner. And when I was growing up in school, this was a cabbage field. So there was a father and son, Mike and John Sawyer, who lived in Geneseo and farmed. And they felt that there was a strong need for farmers to have an outlet for their corn. So they got a group of investors to come together for Western New York Energy. So I know you guys have some pop rocks with you. So, 2 things from this. We produce corn syrup that could go into something like this. Also, the CO2 that is produced from the ethanol production. This is actually a completely separate company. They're co-located on our property called Air Products. And what they do is they take the CO2 from us, they clean it and compress it, and they send it out as beverage grade CO2. And that can go into things like beer, pop, anything like that. So you can see a truck loading that CO2 right now. So they're actually a completely separate company, but it's great to have them here co-located because we can just pipe our CO2 right over to them and they can sell it.
Very, very cool stuff. And so, Amanda, do you do classroom visits as well?
Yes, absolutely. We are always welcome and open to any field trips. I'm also happy to travel and come talk to you guys more about ethanol production and some of the different jobs in our industry. We also have a community open house here at the plant every August. So if anyone is interested in tours, please feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions,
Yeah.
but thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye.